सबको नमस्कार. Uh, it is indeed my pleasure to be here amongst all of you. And I, being the convener, it is my prime responsibility to invite all of you to this very special webinar on AGPs for growth and health of poultry. Possibly, you would like to know what AGPs are. AGPs means alternative growth promoters. Well, this issue of AMR, ladies and gentlemen, when I say AMR, it is antimicrobial resistance in the food has been discussed, and the discussions are on at the global level and also at the national level. The objective here is, how do you have the safe food? When I say food, this definitely includes our poultry meat and eggs as well. Ultimately, the safe food production, the FSSAI has been talking about it. Our animal husbandry department, government of India has been talking about it. The safe food required, which possibly, they mean is free from antibiotics, is towards improving our own health. When I say this, I do not say that antibiotics are bad. They are good, but then they have to be used very, very judiciously towards the therapeutic use in a manner they help in improving the health of the bird for quality production. Well, therefore, looking into all these issues, I think it is time we looked at the traditional system where our Honorable Prime Minister has been focusing that the traditional system, that is the system of the herbs, has to be used in a manner which is scientifically validated, which has the basis of science towards the improvement of the human health. When he says so, I think it is equally true for our livestock and poultry as well. And this is what brings me to this very special webinar where we have our valued guests and speakers amongst us. So one speaker, which I am sure all of you are very, very familiar, is Professor P.K. Shukla. I welcome you, Professor P.K. Shukla, to this webinar on AGPs for growth and health of poultry. Friends, Professor Shukla is a well-known person in the poultry field, whether you talk of academia or from the industry. He is doctorate in PhD in poultry science. Currently, he is serving as the registrar and dean PGS to Duwasu, Mathura. And he has a lot of accolades to, what should I say? A lot of awards, lot of recognitions, a lot of scientific publications, a lot of students which he has guided, and also he has served as Joint Commissioner Poultry. He has a lot of experience, has been talking on various forums. I took this opportunity of requesting him, which he gladly accepted. I said, sir, we would want you to discuss more on the alternative growth promoters. So the floor is yours, Professor Shukla. But before I share this floor with you, I have few requests to all the guests who have joined us. Kindly keep yourselves on mute. If you have joined with your name, that would be fine. We would welcome that. If you have joined with your iPhones, iPad, and your names are not reflecting, I would request you to please rename it so that we are able to know you. If you raise your hand, we are able to understand who is the guest who has raised hand, who has raised the query. So that's my second request. The third request is that if you have any questions, please put it on your chat box so that we are able to take those questions with our panelists today, Professor Shukla, and of course, my colleague, Dr. Ganguly, which I would, to whom I would introduce to you later on. And if you request the, the presentations, please write on the chat box your email IDs so that we are able to share the presentations with you. So with these words, Professor Shukla, the floor is all yours. I would request the host to let Professor Shukla share his presentation on AGPs for growth and health of poultry.
Thank you, Dr. Kalra. Indeed, it's a matter of great pleasure today to be amongst you all. I know it was your firm desire to talk on antimicrobial residues and alternate growth promoters since long. Earlier, we thought of having a common get together, but now in a virtual mode. So I must compliment you. Finally, we have succeeded to have it. And today it is happening. So thank you very much.
Most welcome, sir.
All the colleagues from Ayurved, my fellow colleagues, those who have joined on screen to me. Today our topic for discussion is the AGPs for growth and health of poultry. It's a matter which has been discussed time and again. Since old days, we all know we were using one other things as an alternative growth promoters, but soon after the induction of antibiotic, our greediness become paramount, and then in one or other way, use has become misuse. And that becomes a topic for nowadays to discuss what is happening, how we can do it, how we can reduce the impact of this so that we should not have any undue effect, undesirable effect in our livestock or on the human health. Ultimately, when we are talking about use of antibiotics either in the livestock or in the poultry, it could be the therapeutic, it could be prophylactic, it could be non-therapeutic. We all are aware we are using the antibiotic for therapeutic purposes when the animals or birds are diagnosed with the disease and we are putting them on antibiotic. We are also using these antibiotics as prophylactic when we are using these antimicrobials in healthy animals or the birds in advance of expected exposure or after an exposure to an infectious agent, but before the laboratory diagnosis. And there could be a third use, which is neither therapeutic nor prophylactic, and we are calling it as non-therapeutic use, where any use of antibiotic in the absence of disease or documented exposure to microbial diseases. If we see the history of use of our alternative growth promoters, initially the antibiotic has been started as a growth promoter, and here in 1940s there was identification of growth enhancement properties of this antibiotic. And what actually happened, there was a story that fermentation waste from tetracycline production was fed to the chicken as a source of vitamin B12. Then what happened? Chickens fed the waste grew more rapidly than the control. But later on, it was found that this effect was not due to the vitamin content of the feed, but it was due to the residual tetracycline. And 1950 onwards, there was a widespread use of antimicrobials as feed additives. We should also be aware of how this antibiotic growth promoter works. Usually the growth promoter action of antibiotic growth promoter is mediated by their antibacterial effects. This could be nutrient may be protected against bacterial destruction, or absorption of nutrients may improve because of a thinning of small intestinal barrier, or the antibiotics may decrease the production of toxins by intestinal bacteria, or there may be a reduction in the incidence of subclinical intestinal infections. World Health Organization has laid down certain global principles for use of antibiotics, and these includes the antimicrobials should be prescribed only when it is indicated. The use of antimicrobial for prevention of disease can only be justified where it can be shown that a particular disease is present on the premises or is likely to occur. The routine prophylactic use of antimicrobials should never be a substitute for good animal health management, and this sometimes back we forget. When we see the world of antimicrobials, it is full of complexity. Here you can see the different cycles. Either it could be a cycle of veterinary medicines where we are using the antibiotic, or it could be human medicines where we are using antibiotic, or it could be the agricultural operations where we are using the antibiotics, or the wastewater treatment where we are using some chemicals as antimicrobials. And there is a vicious cycle amongst these all environment: veterinary to human, human to water, water to agriculture, again agriculture to human. So this is not so simple as we expect, that either misuse of these antibiotics in human or veterinary only get our complications what we are observing today. But yes, there are some alternatives of antibiotic growth promoters, and this could be the probiotics or the prebiotics or the organic acids or the phytogenics or the enzymes or something like bacteriophage or hyperimmune immunoglobulins or the antimicrobial peptides. As we know, what is the objective of using the alternative growth promoters? Way back we are knowing that antibiotic growth promoters have been used and it was a past trend. But always, whether it is an antibiotic growth promoter or alternative growth promoter, these are being used with the objective of improving the health and productivity of poultry birds. The objective also remains to provide a safe and healthy food for human beings. Very important issue is food has to be nutritious but safe as well. And this calls for a judicious use of antibiotic for therapeutic uses. And it is now a concern of various government levels to produce the safe chicken and the egg. It is a well-known fact that animal protein demand is on rise, and this is on rise since last so many decades, and a prediction says that production increase needed by 2050 is almost 53% in the dairy products and almost 75% in the meat products. Now, what exactly we are doing in the chicken or in the livestock? We are feeding these animals or the bird to get a produce and ultimately to get the profit. We are using them as an efficient bioconverter. But anything which is being fed in excess, the surplus nutrient in excreta comes out, which is almost a wastage of valuable resources. The excreta ultimately recharges the soil, and again we are having the grains and other feed material for the birds to feed upon. But the key issue remains how to increase the efficiency of animals or the birds and how to reduce the nutrient wastage. There is another philosophy about the infectious diseases, and this is very important to me. I am trying to categorize it into 4 bulleted points. Always we should concentrate on these 4 aspects. We should not forget that microbes and vectors, they swim in the evolutionary stream and they swim faster than what we do. Then bacteria reproduce every 30 minutes. We also know for them a millennium is compressed into a fortnight. They are fleet of foot, and the pace of our research must keep up with them or they will overtake us. The microbes were here on Earth 2 billion years before human arrived. learning every trick for their survival, and it is likely that they will be here 2 billion years after we depart. So discovery of the antimicrobials or the antibiotic, it was a leap in the modern medicines, and thanks to penicillin, soon after its discovery, we had a hope that even after getting sick due to the bacterial infection, we can be saved. But now coming to the antimicrobial resistance, definitely it is an advantage to the microbes and not to us. World Health Organization also said in 2010 that the use and misuse of antimicrobials in human medicine and animal husbandry over the past 70 years has led to a relentless rise in the number and types of microorganisms resistant to these medicines, leading to death, increased sufferings and disability, and higher health costs. So AMR has huge negative impact on the health, either due to longer duration of illness or longer treatment or higher mortality or treatment with expensive drugs or increased burden on the health system or some complex surgeries or transplantations and other interventions, or even patient acts as a reservoir of resistant organisms which are passed to community and healthcare workers, or there is a huge economic impact of this. There is an estimate that annual deaths attributed to antimicrobial resistance can exceed to other causes by 2050, and this may touch almost 10 million. Now, mechanism of antibiotic action, we all are aware being wet, so I would like to skip it over here. But we should remember that resistance in microbes is a natural phenomenon. What is resistance? Resistance is unresponsiveness to antimicrobial agents in a standard doses. It is a natural biological unstoppable phenomena, and resistance is generally slow to reverse or sometimes irreversible. So all antimicrobial agents have the potential to select drug resistance subpopulations of microorganisms as per their choice. This resistance could be inherited or the acquired one. This inherited resistance follows the principle of Darwin theory. This inherent resistant and vertical evolution, it brings changes in the chromosomal resistance, and the bacteria may begin life resistance to a particular antibiotic. The bacteria may be resistant because either there is no mechanism to transport the drug into the cell, or they do not contain or rely on the antibiotic's target process or the protein. And we know that specific examples of bacterial strains with known natural resistance are tetracycline resistant Proteus or ampicillin resistant Klebsiella. In acquired resistance, yes, bacteria can acquire the resistance, and in case of vertical evolution, an inherent resistance mutation occurs on the chromosomes and are then selected for an environment where the resistance increases fitness. And in the case of horizontal evolution, genes pass from a resistant strain to a non-resistant strain, conferring resistance on the later. The introduction of antibiotic always alters the environment and acts as a selective pressure. So this is the mechanism how acquired resistance takes place, and what is the mechanism for horizontal gene transfer. We all know it's a normal process of conjugation, transformation, and transduction. This is of the mechanism of resistance, why a bacteria acquires the resistance against the antibiotic, and we all are aware of this. So what are the different factors that contributes to the antimicrobial resistance, always resistance is accelerated through inappropriate use of antimicrobials. The standard treatment guidelines not provided to the physicians or provided but not adhered to by the physicians, or the drugs available without prescription in the market, accessible but a poor quality of medicine, or inadequate monitoring, or irrational self-administration or prescription, it all leads to the antimicrobial resistance. Now, looking to our livestock perspective, how this antibiotic resistance works from the farm to the table. We all are aware that we are giving antibiotics to the animals, and these antibiotics kill most of the bacteria in case of the diseases, but there are certain resistant bacteria which survive and multiply. Ultimately, these are there for spread of these resistant bacteria through livestock products, ultimately leading to exposure to the people, where these people can get sick with resistant infections, and this could be seen in terms of impact as mild illness or sometimes the severe illness too. Now, how this evolution has taken place, how we have come across the recognition, or when we appreciated the misuse of antibiotic, and what has happened. In fact, in 1972, the European Union began ban on different antimicrobials locally. Again, in 1972, the European Union banned tetracycline and penicillin and the streptomycin as antibiotic growth promoters. Subsequently, in 1986, Sweden also banned all AGPs. In 1998, Denmark, they also banned these AGPs. And in 2006, entirely it has been refused by European Union, and they banned there was a complete ban from their side for the use of these AGPs. We know that superbugs are visible problems nowadays, as we never kept our antibiotics in a preservation mode. These superbugs have come because of certain factors. These factors were known but neglected, and they need immediate action. And there could be some factors also which were known but are inevitable. So let us have a look. What are the different factors which are known but neglected? This could be accumulation of resistance to multiple antibiotics, or self-medication and poor compliance, or inappropriate use of antibiotic selection and multiplication of resistant strain, or weak surveillance and regulatory system. But yes, where we don't have any control, are continuous natural evolution of resistance in bugs. So why resistance is a concern? It is having a major concern only because the resistant organisms lead to a treatment failure. It increases the mortality. The resistant bacteria may spread in the community. The low-level resistant can go undetected. It is an added burden on the healthcare costs, threatens to return to pre-antibiotic era, and always there is a selection pressure. So AMR is a multifaceted problems which could be either biological or behavioral or technical or economic or regulatory or educational. So World Health Organization way back has projected certain activities which are major activities either at the level of governance or at the level of regulatory bodies or at the level of capacity building or at a level of community participation. At a level of government, what they recommended, there should be establishment of national alliances against AMR, designation of national focal points in Ministry of Health, and constitution of multi-sectoral national steering committee. In regulatory framework, we need to have a development and application of standard treatment guidelines in health and veterinary sector. We should discourage non-therapeutic use of drugs in animals, and always there should be a restriction on over-the-counter sale of antimicrobial agents. For increasing the capacity building, we need to have a surveillance of antimicrobial use and resistance, the training prescribers for rational use of antimicrobials, reducing disease burden and infection control, and always undertaking the operational research. As community, we need to educate for adherence to recommended regimes and discouraging the self-prescriptions. So to me, what are the key issues now? They are the food safety. How can we ensure animal food production safe with profitability? Or antimicrobial residues, judicious use of antimicrobials in the animal food production system, or the hazardous synthetics in the feed, keeping synthetic ingredients minimum in the feed of biological converter, or maintaining the health index by maintaining higher health index of animals to optimize the production. And overall to this, the return on the investment, we are expecting a better ROI, and this can be achieved when we know how to minimize the production cost, how to reduce the wastage, and how to improve the production indices. Now there are very many alternative growth promoters or growth promoters as a whole. If we'll see, antibiotic, the probiotic, prebiotic enzymes and phytoadditives are there, but they do have their merits and demerits, wherein they are posing their relative importance in relative regimes. In antibiotic, always it comes as residue in the meat, it develops the resistant bacteria, it contributes to AMR, and always there is a negative effect on good bacteria too. The enzymes or the probiotic or the prebiotic, it's a live-fed bacteria. Uncertain gut conditions are there, weaker modulation, it is there, and then pathogenic load with uncertainty is always there. In phytoadditives, they are validated bacteriostatic action. It helps in development of healthy microflora. They help in stabilization of gut microflora too, and it stimulates the immune system. So when we compare antibiotic growth promoters with phytoactive ingredients, in antibiotic growth promoters, they always have a narrower spectrum of action. They develop the resistance. They always imbalance the gut flora. The side effects and incompatibilities are there. And yes, in poultry and in other livestock products, always we need to observe a withdrawal period before the products are being marketed, but always the residue remains an issue. Whereas in phytoactive ingredients, it has a wider spectrum of action, it has no resistance, it balances the gut flora, they do have the anticoccidial action too, it stimulates the feed intake, they are safe and environmentally friendly. So friends, antibiotics are a precious resource. We need to preserve these resources by working together, combating antimicrobial resistance. If there is no action today, there will be no cure tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent presentation, sir. I would thank you from the core of the heart on behalf of all the participants. You very, very explicitly explained to us what AMR is all about, how antibiotics usage actually started, and then gradually how it moved to the alternates, what are the merits, what are the demerits, and you did share in the last that antibiotics are important. They have to be used judiciously for therapeutic purposes, but definitely not to be promoted or used as growth promotion, because this might lead to AMR. People might agree, might not agree, but then this is a challenge. This is the fact of life, which I said in the beginning, it is being discussed nationally and globally. So as Team India, we need to be very, very vocal about the local. So whatever is good, we need to take it forward. Whatever are the gaps, we need to fill those gaps and then take it forward. I would like to thank you once again. I'm sure a lot of questions would be emerging because there are close to 60 people who are connected to this webinar. So once we have the next presentation, after that we would take on certain questions and then we would request you to respond. Well, in continuation to this, what you shared, so about phytoadditives, the merits and how they are good, I have my colleague with me, Dr. Bhaskar Ganguly. Welcome, Dr. Bhaskar. Dr. Bhaskar is the principal scientist and head of the clinical research. He's a young vet, very, very passionate, and has been working on in our R&D and is connected with the field veterinarians, with the professors in the academics. And his prime responsibility is that whatever are the formulation developed, because when we develop formulations, we work on various options. So he understands those options, takes those options to various veterinary institutes, colleges, and with the help of the academia, we undertake the projects, trials, scientific validations, not only in India, but abroad as well. The objective, ladies and gentlemen, here is to have the scientific proof of how these formulations, phyto additives or the herbal formulations work. That is the basis of this science. So to share more on this, I have my colleague, Dr. Bhaskar Ganguly, who's also PhD in the veterinary science. I would request you, Dr. Bhaskar, to share your presentation to this effect. So the floor is yours, Dr. Bhaskar. We have another, say, 20 minutes or so.
Thank you very much, sir. So actually in the industry and means the people who are working with poultry, there is some dispute regarding the use of the term AGP. It is used ambiguously both for antibiotic growth promoters as well as alternative growth promoters. So in this particular presentation, I'll be talking about AGPs as alternative growth promoters. Dr.
Absolutely.
has spoken of AGPs as antibiotic growth promoters already. So the present day broiler that we have, it is a absolute marvel of genetic selection, livestock keeping in every sense, because no other animal you can expect to means grow 35 times of its birth weight in about 35 days, or let's say 40 times of its birth weight in 40 days. So it's an absolute protein producing machine, and what drives this machine is means two key organs. One is the gut that we are discussing today, and another is the liver. So the gut is extremely important to keep this machine, with this protein producing machine running. So much so that the gut itself is responsible for consuming about 20% of the total energy of the body. Of the total energy requirements of the body, the gut itself consumes about 20%. Why? Because it is the seat of digestive functions, obviously, where digestion takes place. And as we discussed in our previous webinar, that it is also responsible for, that is the single largest immune organ of the poultry. So a good gut will not only ensure proper digestion, it will also ensure proper immunity. Then the gut is also the single largest endocrine organ in the body of the chicken. So again, means you see so many functions related to the health of the gut, and all of these functions as well as the health of the gut itself is dependent on microbial communities. It is not dependent on the host itself. It is not means dependent solely on the feed that we offer, but it is dependent on the microbial communities as well. So this is a very oversimplistic representation of what happens in the gut with carbohydrates. I have focused only on carbohydrates, not on proteins and other sources of nutrition. We know carbohydrates form, let's say, about 55 to 60% of the source of energy for the bird. So you can see that most of the digestion of the carbohydrates is actually fermentative in nature. Only in the duodenum it is exclusively enzymatic, otherwise it is fermentative in the foregut, in the small intestine, as well as in the large intestines. And the pH as well as the transit time, they are also dependent on the microbial communities. So microbial communities in the gut, they are not only responsible for fermentative digestion, they are also taking care of the optimum pH and the transit time. So the problem that we face is that once we go for antimicrobials, or let's say antibiotics. So we are taking part of this red part. We are taking care of this red part, that okay, means we are controlling the harmful bacteria, so there won't be competition for nutrition. They won't be able to produce toxins. They won't present a challenge for immunity, and so on and forth. But the use of antibiotics or antimicrobials will also deter the beneficial effects of gut microbia. That is, they aid in digestion, the production of vitamins. Once you use antimicrobials, obviously the dependence on external sources of vitamins is going to increase. Then microbes, they stimulate the immunity of the organism, means of the chicken. So that those functions will also be compromised. Similarly, many beneficial bacteria, they are involved in the breakdown of toxins, of carcinogens and aflatoxins as well. So all of those functions will be compromised once we switch exclusively to antimicrobials for control of gut microbiota. Now this is what is happening inside. Outside there are environmental and health implications as well, what Professor Shukla has already talked about. So this is an excellent paper published this year, looking back 20 years at just one type of microorganism, that is Campylobacter, and just one type of microbial resistance, that is fluoroquinolone resistance, FR. So you see that this means the authors, they said that okay, that what we are feeding today, once that leaks out into the population, goes into the environment, it will take at least 20 years to realize the harm that it has done. So that is why they chose to analyze the data of 20 years back, 1999, and the paper was published this year. So they could conclude that just one type of bacteria and one type of antibiotic resistance was responsible for almost 18 million US dollars worth of excess human medical costs way back in 1999. And these costs have been realized over this period of 20 years. So you can imagine that so many different types of bacteria, so many different types of antibiotics, what would the total cost of antimicrobial resistance be? Another very noticeable point is that an additional kilogram of enrofloxacin administered to chicken, a kg of enrofloxacin, at least in India, you can get it for somewhere in bulk for 350 rupees a kg. In US, it would cost somewhere like $70 or $80 or maybe $110 at the most. So that is the use of 1 kilogram of enrofloxacin is actually costing the human society an additional cost of $1,500. So these are the costs that we do not see, and they are there just because of unjudicious use of antimicrobials. I'll be talking about one particular solution that we offer in this regard, that is Enbiotic. So it is a herbal growth promoter along with essential oils. So it is recommended for inhibition of pathogenic bacteria, promoting good microbial communities in the gut, improving gut health and stabilization of gut mucosa. It is recommended usually at 250 grams per ton of feed, but can also be used up to 500 grams per ton of feed. The herbal activity profile, these are some of the salient herbal constituents. So Allium sativum lasson, very well known antimicrobial, immunomodulatory, digestive, carminative, hypolipidemic, and action. All of this is already known. It has, very well known for lectins. So those lectins, they have immunomodulatory property. Then antimicrobial function is already known. Similarly for ginger, it is tonic in nature, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. There is gingerone, which is COX-2 inhibitor. And there is gingerol, which is anti-inflammatory as well as antidiarrheal in nature. So all of this is already documented. We are not saying anything, and it is reputed in our Materia Medica for these functions. And similarly, chicory, Chicory mentibus, it is a prebiotic. It has inulin and oligofructose. So they act as prebiotics, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, rejuvenating. Plus several other herbs it has, and essential oils like eucalyptus oil is there. Then Erica sativa, the taramira, that is there, and so lots of different herbal components. So how do these functions, okay, we talked about the isolated functions of different herbs, but how do these come together in Enbiotic to act? So we have employed the most advanced form of reverse pharmacological modeling in silico, and we presented this paper at IPSF Georgia last year. So you can see, I'll just zoom into it. So once you feed Enbiotic, so you can see that what are the pathways that are being, stimulated. You can see angiogenesis, B cell or B lymphocyte activation obviously means for immunity. Then CCKR, this is cholecystokine receptor signaling, very important for proper digestion. And similarly, you see the tallest peaks I'm talking about, gonadotropin releasing hormone. Now, to somebody who, it would strike you, what is gonadotropin releasing hormone doing in the gut? So this is extremely important for cell-cell adhesion and maintaining integrity of the gut epithelium. And similarly, G protein signaling, again, very important for inflammatory pathways and immunity. Then inflammation mediated cytokine pathways, integrin signaling, PDGF, this is a platelet derived growth factor, again very important for proper health and regular proliferation of the mucosal epithelial cells, so that they keep on replacing the cells that are being sloughed off. Then again T cell activation, T lymphocytes, then VEGF, this is vascular endothelial growth factor. And WNT, again very important for differentiation of stem cells in the crypts of the gut into means dedicated gut epithelial cells. So such kind of things. So obviously means you can see that how it acts, and this is only what it does with the host. These are effects on the host. If we see effects on the microorganisms, then again similar kinds of actions. We have done molecular docking and all those kinds of studies. So this is CI1 autoinducer synthase. So rogue organisms means bad microorganisms, they will use a specific types of signaling molecules to communicate amongst themselves, because a single bacteria, if it produces harmful organisms or biofilms or exotoxins, it is not efficacious. So they rely on such signals that, okay, when a certain number of microorganisms have grown up, then they release these signals and they sense. This is known as Puram sensing. So CAI1 is actually Puram sensing molecule. So once those, and you see Eruca sativa that we talked of earlier, so it is a constituent herb present in antibiotics. So one of the active ingredients in Eruca sativa is erucic acid. So erucic acid, it inhibits CI1 autoinducer. So those harmful organisms, they cannot talk to each other. They won't produce all those harmful molecules. Similarly, again another transcription activator known as laser. Laser is also inhibited by erucic acid, and laser is very important transcriptional activator for production of exotoxins by all organisms like Proteus and Pseudomonas and E. coli, Salmonella. So whenever they are producing exotoxins, they rely on the this transcriptional activator laser class of molecules, and erucic acid, it effectively inhibits it. Similarly, syringic acid, this comes from chicory. So syringic acid, it inhibits beta-lactamase. We know that beta-lactamase are produced by many resistant organisms. So if there is resistance not coming up, and if there is resistance already existing, so it can even take care of those antimicrobial resistant organisms. Now, with antimicrobials, you can only expect local function, that okay, they'll take care of bacteria and systemic effects won't be there. But with phytogenic, since antibiotic is a phytogenic preparation, so you can expect ancillary functions as well. This you won't get with antibiotics. So additional benefits that you get with alternative growth promoters, or let's say phytogenics. So this is a particular study that has been taken up at the Center of Excellence for Poultry Science in the USA at Fayetteville, University of Arkansas. So you can see that in the zoo technical performance, we got 17 points improvement in FCR, 1.59 in antibiotic group versus 1.76 in control. And how this was achieved? First, you see upregulation of hypothalamic certain genes and gene products like ADPOQ, STAT3, MPK alpha 1, leptin receptor, ghrelin. So these are all molecules that are responsible, they act as for gauges of, they are like real-time indicators of what is the reserves of energy within the body. So they coordinate with satiety and hunger centers in the hypothalamus of the bird, so that birds will not overeat. They'll eat just the right amount. So wastage of feed is minimized. Then this was also found to upregulate hepatic ACC alpha, downregulate hepatic SCAP, then upregulation of ATGL, LIPC, and such kind of molecules. So these molecules, what these changes suggest is that there was better mobilization of fat in the liver, as well as reduced fat deposition in different organs of the body, including muscles. So these things you won't actually expect from antibiotics as such. And similarly, there was upregulation of muscle mTOR protein, RPS6KB1. So these kind of proteins, they increase the muscle protein synthesis. So obviously, when birds are not eating less, means not eating more than they require, they are eating just the right amounts. They are accumulating less fat and increasing means producing more protein. So you get better performance in all regards. Now there is no dearth of, I talked just one presentation, but we have no dearth of scientific validation. Our product Enbiotic has been validated with over 3 international trials in broilers, 8 domestic trials, 3 domestic trials in layers, several publications. And I'll talk about my favorite one, right? So this is some salient publications that have emanated out of our work. So this is a very old study done in 2012-13. Still my favorite. Why? Because it was done in acute stress conditions. You see, April to May in 2012, in the heart of India, hottest part of India, Latur district, ambient temperature 36 to 44 degrees Celsius, and means a nightmare for poultry keepers. But you see, just we'll see what are the results. So you can see that group 1 is the control group. Group 2 is AGP10. AGP10 is the research code for Enbiotic. So 250 grams per ton of feed of Enbiotic. Then group 3 is 500 grams per ton of Enbiotic. Then group 4 was BMD, 100 grams per ton of feed. And group 5 is a popular competitor brand. You can see that group 2, group 3, where Enbiotic has been given at 250 and 500 grams per ton of feed. So you can see superlative performance. So these, technically speaking, you won't see here what is 1519 grams at 6 weeks of age in poultry, but you see the conditions in which the product has been tested. No environmental control, nothing, and means you're getting this much, almost like 300 or 400 grams additional weight. And similarly, FCR is going to fall down obviously because of all those conditions that are existing. So you can see that 1.87 versus 1.79 in 250 grams group, 1.76, and comparable in BMD and this the competitor group. Similarly, dry matter digestibility, again much better in case of Enbiotic. Protein digestibility, again superlative performance in case of Enbiotic. Crude fiber digestibility, again very good performance and compared to others. Digestibility of fat, again superlative performance. Dressing percentage, again lot of improvement. You see 64% versus 76%. Villus height, we talked about. Once I actually missed this point of talking about this point. What happens is that bacteria, when they're present in the gut, they'll cause a persistent level of low grade inflammation. It is not an obvious inflammation, but it is a very low grade of inflammation persisting over a period of time, and that causes rapid aging of tissues. So the gut micro, this epithelium, it will be sloughed off more frequently. So when we say that it takes usually 2.5 to 3 days, so you can expect that with bad bacteria in there, it can get sloughed, let's say, in 2.5 days. With better microbiome, means better microflora in the gut, it may go up to 3 days, 3.5 days. So what is actually seen in case of the histology is that once gut mucosa stays for a longer period of time, so the villi will obviously achieve greater heights. So villus height tends to represent that because cells take more time to grow and they are growing over means they get more time to grow. So the villus height, that tends to increase. So you can see that with Enbiotic you are getting again this second group and third group in the duodenum and jejunum, both as well as in ileum. So you can see that it is much better than control or the competitor groups. Villus width, not only the height increases, the width of the villus that also increases. Right? So again, you can see that better performance with case of Enbiotic, and this translates into much better absorption of nutrients, because once villus height and width increase, the absorptive surface area available for absorption of the nutrient, that increases. So it is known only. And crypt depth, this may increase slightly or may remain the same, but still in our case we were able to obtain improvement in crypt depth as well. The key findings from this particular study, if we see, so Enbiotic improved growth performance, feed efficiency, dressing percentage, intestinal histology, and overall nutrient digestibility. And the results were significantly better at the higher dose. And if you see the order in which the improvement was achieved, so Enbiotic performed best, followed by BMD, then Brand-Z, and of the least being control. There were no deleterious effects were seen in this particular trial, and it was found safe for use. So what I've done is I've also, summarized the findings from all the studies that we have with this particular product Enbiotic. You can see that consistent, and the product has been testing it under diverse different conditions. So the conditions will vary in different places. And still you can see that in most cases Enbiotic will perform much better as control to control, or it is at par only, right? So in case of broilers, 1.87 versus 1.79, 2.03 versus 1.9, so on. I believe all of you can read faster than me, right? And not only in broilers, for layers as well. So our conclusions would be that Enbiotic is an ideal natural alternative for replacement of antibiotic growth promoters, and it counters AMR because it takes care of, we talked about this diversity and alpha and beta diversity last time. So antimicrobials, they promote both alpha and beta diversity. We have seen that it acts on the harmful microbes selectively, and obviously the environment impact will also be reduced. There will be additional health benefits that you cannot expect from antibiotics. And just the trial that we talked of, in that the cost benefit ratio that was realized was about 1:11. So for every rupee of investment in Enbiotic, you can expect about 11 rupees on the basis of the results in that particular study that I showed. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. Dr. Bhaskar, thank you very much. Indeed, the kind of information which you have shared with our valuable guest today is that herbals have been documented at the scientific level. You have gone up to the molecular level. You have tried to understand and examine that how these herbs are effective and could be a better alternate or an option or antibiotics for improving the growth, health and productivity of the birds, and ultimately producing safe food for the human beings. So thank you once again, Dr. Ganguly and Professor Shukla, for sharing this wonderful presentation. I was just trying to look at the chat. One of the chat just now said is from R. Ramuta. She said, what is the cost economic factor? I think you have just shared that if you spend 1 rupee, you get 10 rupees benefit. So I think that
it tends to vary. See, what happens is once you test a particular product under stress conditions, so obviously it will perform better. जहाँ मुर्गी को ऑलरेडी आप कंफर्ट में रख रहे हैं, इसी में रख रहे हैं, एनवायरमेंट कंट्रोल फैक्टर रख रहे हैं, उसको अच्छा वाला फीड बिल्कुल स्टेराइल सब कुछ खिला रहे हैं, वहाँ पे यू वोंट गेट दिस मच अमाउंट ऑफ कॉस्ट बेनिफिट.
Correct.
Here already everything is under control. But it means the real test of the product is under stress conditions, and there the product means with at least with the trial report that I shared, in such conditions you get means good cost benefit ratios.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. We have some time for the questions. In case you have any questions, you can please put them onto the chat box, and our expert panel comprising of Professor Shukla and Dr. Ganguly are here. They would definitely try and respond to your queries. If you have any, it could be about AMR, it could be about safe use of the antibiotics, or use of antimicrobials, or alternative growth promoters, how they could be beneficial. So any questions which you may have, you can put it on the chat box. I could definitely raise those questions to Professor Shukla and Dr. Bhaskar so that they can respond. If at all you have any other queries which you want to ask, you can put a mail across to us. We would forward those mails to Professor Shukla and Dr. Bhaskar. Maybe some of you may be interested to carry on the scientific validations. We are open to it. you need some more technical information, the experts are available here. You can share your inputs.
Dr. Kalra, I could see in the chat box, a few
Right.
of the people have written about getting the presentations on their email.
Right.
Just please see to it and send it to them.
Yes, we will definitely, sir. I have received a lot of mails and they're interested to have your presentation, which we would definitely forward to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think people are responding to the questions. Yes. Hello. Okay. Okay. Ranjan, am I audible to you? Mr. Ranjan?
Okay, I see a question from somebody familiar, Ms. Pooja Rawal, and she's asking that, okay, what gets compromised by one product usually gets compensated by other alternatives. So how does Enbiotic stand out? See, in case when you're looking at, replacers for antibiotic growth promoters, so you would be looking at, let's say, core antimicrobials, means antibiotics, or let's say, like anticoccidials and such kind of products. Or you could be looking at, enzymes and proteins and such classes of products. Or there are products such as arsenicals and copper sulfate, zinc oxide, and those classes, chemical antimicrobials. So how does Enbiotic stand out? Very good question, very pertinent. That with Enbiotic, we are relying on the body itself to take care of these functions. You don't have to supplement enzymes means extrinsically, because you are giving herbal components which stimulate the body to produce enzymes. Similarly, let's say you are giving zinc oxide or copper sulfate to take care of antimicrobials. So again, in this case, what you are doing is instead of relying on chemicals derived from, let's say, means core chemical molecules, you are relying on phytochemicals that will selectively act only against those harmful bacteria and stop the crosstalk. So you cannot expect that from copper sulfate. Copper sulfate will acidify, it will kill harmful bacteria as well as beneficial bacteria. So those are the areas. Plus, I have already talked of numerous ways, right? So all of that is taken care of by phytogenics, because as Professor Shukla said, that microorganisms have been on this planet for 2 billion years before us. So you cannot expect the body to meet those requirements to counter something that has been there. They are much smarter than us. But plants or phytogenics, when we talk of them, they have been on the planet for at least an equivalent period of time. So microorganisms and plants, they have co-evolved. Human beings or poultry or chicken or animals, they haven't. So these means molecules, the secondary metabolites that we talk of in plants, they are better prepared to face all those microbial challenges. So that is the cumulative way in which Enbiotic stands out as a growth promoter, as an as a replacer of antibiotic growth promoter.
Pooja, I think Dr. Ganguly has been able to respond to your queries. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. Mr. Saxena is connected with us, and I've received a request that he wants to make some observations and some value add to the webinar. So can I request you, Mr. Saxena, to share your views, please?
Thank you, Dr. Kalra. First of all, I would like to congratulate and thanks Professor Shukla for making the beginning for our journey towards this what we call AMR, which is a vital issue, global issue, but how country can move towards the antibiotic-free chicken production. And today is the beginning, and I really liked the way he explained this problem, and his closing thing that if you don't act today, probably tomorrow you will have nothing to treat yourself. This is a very, very strong and very powerful message. Now, the point I want to make is, Dr. you also know that how important this subject of AMR has been. And when this 3 years ago, when this global report came that cholesterol sulfate is used maximum in India, and this New Delhi Staphylococcus aureus originates superbug from India, and because the maximum antibiotics are used in China and India. It was a big dent for our poultry industry because the news was not right in the sense that every farmer, every producer was using antibiotics. And therefore, we set up a lab in Chidana to test the feeds and eggs for the residues of antibiotic to see whether residues are there or not in Haryana area. And to our surprise, using the simple ELISA, quantitative ELISA, we found that yes, situation is there where these antimicrobials are still being used. Whether it is known to a farmer or not known to a farmer is not something, but the fact is that we need to do something. And therefore, it's not about the herbal product selling, but it is about the science which is there in the herbal product and the natural way. In fact, antibiotic is coined that the natural biotic forces, natural biotic forces are there so long as the life exists, and that's what we call life energy. Antibiotics, in a real sense, since many of us are from technical side, we all know antibiotic stops the growth of bacteria. So if there is a wound doesn't heal unless the natural healing follows. And that natural healing, otherwise wound stays sterile. And that's the one reason that in many cases, there may be a sterile gut, and the antibiotic was used to study whether it has a growth promoting effect or not. And there was a huge debate in 60s and 70s and 80s to address only one question, yes or no, does antibiotic has a growth promotion effect? There was a yes, and then there was the people to say no. And then they came out with a conclusive experimentation that antibiotics only has got effect on the bacteria, has no growth promotion effect. And all along what we have been using is what Dr. Shukla said, that antibiotic is not a license for the good animal husbandry practices. So Dr. Saab, I'm really very much thankful and thankful to all the other people. It's our basically mission mode program where we know that it's a very tough journey, not easy, but in the interest of our next generation and to make the food safe and still available. Our concern is that today poultry industry is getting affected because of misinformation campaign. And therefore, I always appeal to all the producer, processor, veterinarian fraternity that consumer education is the key for the survival of the industry. I get the questions from the very, very informed and learned fraternity including the medical fraternity, who still believes that the table eggs are not to be eaten by the married woman uh, because of the myth that these eggs contains life. And if you incubate them, you will get a chick out of this. And therefore, when you are eating this, you are eating life. Now, just imagine what is the degree of awareness even the educated society has got about the poultry. So I shared those information with them, and he said, how come we don't know? I said, because you never bothered to know. So if you know that, like many people do not know what is reconstituted milk. And when they really get to know, first they don't believe. And this I am telling about the IAS fraternity. One of the joint secretary IAS, he had come and then he was talking about the dairy, and this subject came. Why government keeps on importing butter oil and skimmed milk powder and allow the producer to produce the same milk by homogenization and mix it in the fresh milk. He said, come again, what are you saying? What is mixed? Then I explained him the entire process. He didn't believe me. He phoned up one of his friends from the NDDB, and then they say, oh yes, during the summertime we do it when the shortage is there, but now it is, yes, it is true. So milk is a milk, because anything which is in a pouch is considered as a milk. So whatever looks white is a milk. Same is the situation. Last time when we had met, I said, anda is a anda. So you have a 92 brands of car in the country. And what is the difference of all the cars it has? But we have 92 brands of the car. But how many brands of the eggs are there, which matters with the nutrition and life of the thing. So what you keep on hearing, in the midday meal scheme, egg has been supplied, the quality was substandard, children fallen sick, and therefore it has been stopped. And then what affects the basically in poultry industry? Same is in COVID time. Before COVID also, and after COVID, and even now also. If you eat chicken, coronavirus will spread. So people stop eating the chicken. So we must spend time to educate the public about the scientific facts and burst those myths which are very, very damaging to the industry. So I would like to seek cooperation. Today there might be 67 people only who are attending, but each one of us can spread this message to 10 people. In a way, it will reach to 700 and 7,000 and likewise, because this is a ray of light that the knowledge can take us out of this darkness of AMR. Today, we have seen how important it is to address the issue of AMR, and it is not only just for the companies or the poultry people, processor, but for each and every Indian, because still we are the country with deficient protein. We do not have enough protein to feed, and those who knows about the quality of protein, they know that all proteins are measured with respect to egg albumin, which is the best, the cheapest per kg wise, the cheapest protein. So with all these virtues, this industry deserves the support of all academicians, all the poultry people, and more so the government about the right steps which needs to be taken in this direction. Since Dr. Shukla is virtually in all the apex committee, whether it is of Niti Aayog, whether it is of the Ministry of Animal Husbandry Department, and Poultry. He can make the recommendations, the right recommendation, and in fact, for the Atmanirbhar Bharat, I call it herbalism is the pride of India. Our Ayurveda is a leading light for rest of the world, and when we supply these products abroad and the people use them, well, they say we don't know even A of Ayurveda, but what we see ourselves cannot deny that yes, this is the something which benefit us in terms of total sustainability and creating the basically better economics for them.
Thank you very much, sir.
These are some of my thoughts.
Thank you very much, sir. I have a question, sir, for Professor Shukla, and I have received it just now. It says, sir, given an opportunity between the... Are you on mute, sir? Okay, just a minute. Mr. Ranjan, can you unmute Professor Shukla, please? Mr. Ranjan?
Done.
Yeah. I have a question for you from one of the young, I possibly believe he's a scientist. He says, Professor Shukla, given an option between the use of antibiotics and alternative growth promoters in your own farm, what would you prefer?
See, antibiotic as growth promoter, we never prefer. And antibiotic should never be used as a growth promoter. If you want to have a growth promoting activity, you do have many more options lies with you. So certainly if I have been given chance, I'll never use antibiotic as growth promoter at my farm.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. I don't see any more questions here on the chat box, and we have also crossed our time limit. We had said 4 to 5. So I would once again like to thank you, Professor Shukla, for having spared your valuable time and guided the entire group. And I would also like to thank Dr. Bhaskar Ganguly for sharing the insights on the scientific validations and proving that the herbals can equally be proven on the scientific platform like any other chemical. So thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. And this webinar surely would not have been successful without your presence. So I sincerely thank all of you for your time and presence. And once again, before I sign off, we take this commitment that you have sent your email IDs, and whatever have been your request, we would send the presentations to you as requested. So thank you all once again. Thank you, Professor Shukla. Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ravikant. Thank you, Jugender.